Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons in context to the brand new Michael Fassbender show, um, The Agency. So first of all, this is every Dungeon Master content. It is phenomenal. It is 18 plus, so every Dungeon Master over 18. It is really an incredible show, and it's worth your watching. So one, I believe in money. I believe in capitalism, and I think and they paid money for this, right? So there's incredible talent on this show. Richard Gere, that's money, man. You don't get him on a show for less than like a million. Like there's easily $1 million went into getting him on the show, easily, right? Michael Fassbender, that dude, man, like 3-5 million easy, like maybe a lot higher, right? And Jeffrey Wright, is incredibly talented, and he is really doing a fantastic job right now. Just being in the best projects, he's really incredible. He's extremely highly sought after. So this show is a banger, okay? And it's about Michael Fassbender, a spy, okay, who has been deep undercover for like 3 years. And I appreciate that they didn't exaggerate that. It's just like 3 years, right? And he's lived in another identity for 3 years, okay? So he gets called back, right? And it completely uproots his life, right? And I mean, like, dramatically, right? And so he has to be a spy, but he also has to be a person. And it shows how many obstacles there are to that. But the show has other characters, all right? So two other characters is there's this one young girl. She's like maybe between 20, 25 years old. And she's getting ready to go into Tehran and be a spy in Tehran, specifically to find out to find out where they're at in their nuclear, in their race to an armed nuclear weapon, which they can use against you know who, right? Like, yeah. Well, actually, I guess there's two targets, but anyway, so Tehran, okay. So she has a hand, and she is getting to the point where she's about to be put into position in Tehran, and her handler is talking to her about this and getting her ready, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, there's a lot of things that are really hard," and her handler's like, "Yeah, there are, right? Like, so, but you got sunk costs here, right? Like, we've been training you've been training for like 3 or 4 or 5 years, but all your little complaints, they better go away real quick, right? Because you're about to do something that is outrageously difficult, right? And you got to do it, right? And if you don't want to, shut up and go take your Taco Bell job, right? I don't want to hear your whining, right? You're about to be a spy, and you're either going to be it or you're not, right? And the handler's very like forthright about it. And then the handler says something profound, and this is the part for you and me as Dungeon Masters, okay? You and me as Dragon Masters, okay? You ready? All right. Listen carefully. The handler says to the person who's about to be placed in Tehran, she says, "Do you want to know the cost to a human being to live in another identity for weeks, months, or years? The actual cost, question mark." Right? And, and then it goes back to the, person who's going to be, this young woman who's going to be put in Tehran. And she says, "What is the cost?" And so the handler says, "The cost is to live absolutely alone forever." Okay? And so here's where we land. Okay? Now, get this. This show is about spies. Okay, and it's saying, hey, it's really tough to be a spy today. It's not. I don't think it's that tough, right? So first of all, this show is great, but it's Lacar like fantasy. Like, this is one of those Hollywood fantasies where they're like, "Hey, everybody, magazines are still important, and they pay magazine editors $1 million a year." And you're like, yeah, that's in every like Hallmark movie, but that's not real. Nobody cares about magazines. That hasn't been real. And so most spying is done clickety-clack on a keyboard now, right? There's not a lot of deep spies who are like in undercover, right? So this is a bit of an exaggeration from the show, but it was completely true 20, 30 years ago. Now, what I'm saying is that this is completely true for you as a dungeon master, for me as a dungeon master, for you as a dragon master, and for me as a dragon master. This is true for us, right? You're like, wait a second, Scott, what do you mean? Like, how does me playing Dungeons and Dragons mean the cost is for me to live absolutely alone forever? Well, let me get you there, okay? So first of all, I do feel this way a lot, and the reason why is I ain't playing, I ain't playing Goblin Chop Dungeons and Dragons, right? I left that decades ago, right? At this point, I'm playing games where I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons where we are doing social experiments, right? We're jumping all the way in, playing people we know, playing ourselves in the future, playing ourselves in the past, playing ourselves, taking different paths through life and calculating risk, right? And literally doing temporal branching with Dungeons and Dragons. Ain't nobody I could talk to about this in the IRL. Nobody, right? Except the people who I'm doing with, and they're in it, right? So there's no, and the other thing is, the people I'm with barely understand what we're doing and are trying to catch up, right? Because what I'm doing is not being done by anyone else with Dungeons and Dragons, right? We're on the absolute bleeding edge of this. And that's my point, right? I have, this is not a joke, I challenge you to show me receipts where I'm wrong. I have discussed Dungeons and Dragons more voluminously and more broadly than anyone in the world, bar none. You will not find anyone with more videos on Dungeons and Dragons than me, and you absolutely will not find anyone who has even remotely discussed Dungeons and Dragons at the width and the breadth that I have on more topics. No one in the world, right? But I got, go look at Professor Dungeon Master's channel. He complains constantly. I hate Dungeons and Dragons because of X, Y, and Z. He's got 100,000 subs, right? I love Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm doing things that no one else in the world is doing with it, and have 3,000 subs. I am alone, right? There is a terrible cost for this. And the reason why is people don't understand it. And identity stacking is terrifying. Exactly like the handler was saying, there's incredible risk around it, right? If you want to go play your ridiculous Goblin Chop game, go watch Dungeon Dudes and be blessed. Ain't nobody going to bother you. Ain't nothing going to challenge you there. And you will not be alone in your pablum vanilla mediocrity. But if you want to identity stack, if you want to be the thing, if you want to feel the sacrifice, if you want to experience what it's like to see the sunset on 30 worlds, right? To be 30 or 300 entities, alien and separate and distinct from yourself, you will be alone, right? You will find yourself in spaces surrounded by 3 or 30 IRL meat sacks who have no idea what you care about and have no idea what's in your head, your heart, your gut. They don't live the way you do. You will be absolutely alone forever. It is, and just like Michael Fassbender's character, sometimes you find a brief respite, right? Where you can trust and you can talk and you can hope and you can be, right? In peace and solace. But it is extremely rare, right? Most of the time, others will call you for doing this, for even attempting it. People will call you crazy. They'll call you delusional. They'll say you have, what, grandeur, like delusions of grandeur, right? They'll say you're trying to do too much. They're saying it's just a game. Even though people have literally come to burn the books multiple times. Even though the intellectual property continues to have crises that are not seen on any product in the world. It's incredible, right? But this is the cost of identity stacking, in my humble opinion. I appreciate you letting me share this with you. This one was quite personal. Thank you very much. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion on identity stacking and Dungeons and Dragons and espionage. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider subscribing and have a fetch millennium.